Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining IGI's Holiday Hacking, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday webinar. Today we have the privilege of having Tyler Ward join us. He is the Vice President of Security at IGI. He joined our organization about a month ago, and we are so thrilled to have him on our leadership team. He holds an MBA and a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems Security from the American Military University, as well as numerous certifications, including CISSP, a Global Information Assurance certification, among multiple others. But the title I know that he's most proud of is Dad. Tyler is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and has nearly 15 years of technical, operation, and managerial experience in both the public and private sectors. Tyler's experience spans a wide array of cybersecurity verticals to include compliance, penetration testing, security engineer, security operations center management, incident response, forensics, blockchain security, and security awareness training. So that is a lot. We really appreciate you joining us today. I think you will find him knowledgeable and engaging. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Kimberly, for such a regal entrance and introduction. Thank you very much. And you're right, title most proud of is definitely Dad, and it's also the most work and the most fulfilling and rewarding. So thank you for that. And everybody, thanks for getting together with us right before the holidays. I know that we've all got a lot of things going on. A lot of you are probably out there firefighting and trying to tie up those issues that you have had going on throughout the month, trying to get things squared away before the holiday season. Nevertheless, it's always a good time to talk about cybersecurity. It's definitely always on our minds. It is what we do 24/7, even while we're sleeping. This is what we do. So we thought it would be good to impart some knowledge on all of you before you go into the holiday season. Things to take a look at, current threats and such. Take a look at our agenda. Okay, going through our agenda today, we're going to talk about, why exactly attackers are targeting our users and our organizations during the holidays. What are some of the things that are changing, right? Whenever we have environmental changes that are predictable by attackers or criminals, they tend to exploit those. They use anything to their advantage that they can. So we're going to talk about the dreaded 3 S's of online shopping, the Black Friday and Cyber Monday risks. Everybody's purchasing things. So we're going to talk through some of those inherent risks and what we can do to combat those risks. Phishing and social engineering attacks, those are always 2 of the more common types of attack techniques. However, especially during the holiday season and any kind of boom in e-commerce time, those things are rising up. So we're going to talk about how to prepare for those types of attacks, those interesting techniques that these attackers are using, and then also how to protect you and your organization, right, as a collective. Now, those 3 pillars to how do we adequately protect our organizations? Well, we need organizational support. We're going to go through the in-depth details on that. We need the support of our technology. We have to make sure that that technology is working for us, whatever we may have. And then policies and procedural support. Some of the more, gray areas of information security that tend to be overlooked. Okay, holiday cyber attacks. So like I said before, hackers are leveraging any advantage possible, right? So the 3 S's of the holiday season: shopping, shipping, and slipping, right? So users are shopping online, at home, in the workplace. Yes, some of us are guilty of purchasing things on Amazon while at work. We know it. So nevertheless, they are shopping, right? So attackers are predicting these things. They see that these organizations or these users are purchasing things online. So they can predict some sort of action, which gives them a slight advantage over any other time of the year, right? Rather than just getting lucky throughout the year, and you may hit somebody with a phishing email, a targeted email as per shipping or receiving. During this time, you can just about bank on somebody is waiting for a package of some sort. And users they're slipping, right? Organizations are slipping. They're outside slipping on black ice in the parking lots, which is never fun. But they're also slipping online. They're clicking on things that they shouldn't be. They're running around frantically. They're trying to pick up the turkey for Thanksgiving the next day, and they're trying to tie up loose ends, on the business side, right? So we've got wire transfers going around, and we've got to host 50 people at our house the next day, right? So things are changing a little bit. People are a little bit more flustered. So attackers are taking advantage of those sorts of things. Okay, so they're preparing for this time. They understand and they can predict what end users are expecting. That's the most dangerous thing. They're there. They're always waiting, but in this particular time, they know what you're expecting, right? So they're mounting campaigns against you, against your organizations, to socially engineer you, to socially engineer your critical people, right? Some are seeking a quick buck to rip off end user credit cards, which is always normal and that's always happening. But there are larger attacks that are being mounted using these as gateways into these organizations. While we can definitely achieve success in exploiting one particular user through these techniques, what is the larger picture? Does that give them a foothold into your environment, into your organization? Are your users giving away their credentials for their email and other sensitive systems, or giving away sensitive data? Okay, so we're going to talk through some of these things in this interesting time. Okay, and as well, our end users are people eating turkey. A lot of L-tryptophan in that, so tend to be a little bit sleepier during these times, so may not be paying attention to things as much as they should. Holiday cyber attacks. So throughout the year, we talk about different types of phishing techniques and campaigns that attackers are mounting against our organizations and our users, and some of them are laughable. Some of them are so bad that you take one look at them and you say, no, this is absolute garbage email. I'm not going to open this. There's no way I'm opening this attachment. However, during this time, the emails, the phishing attacks and the social engineering attacks, they tend to be a little bit more targeted, right? We are expecting things. If you receive one of these types of emails today, you may actually look at it. You're awaiting a package. You probably are. Most of you are awaiting gifts for your loved ones. You're shipping to people around the United States, around the world, wherever your loved ones may be, your friends and family. So these types of emails, they actually start to look legitimate to you. If you're not waiting for a package, you may look at this and say, no, this has got to be a scam. I'm not waiting for anything. However, during this time, things are changing a little bit. So attackers are mounting social engineering campaigns against our users in a widespread fashion, that type of spray and pray type of attack, or they are launching spear phishing attacks, or what we call whaling attacks. Whaling attacks are when you have a key person within your organization, a CEO, a CFO, a chief operating officer, a financial manager. Sorry, my battery is running low. I have a new Iron Man heart. So users are, they're receiving these emails throughout the year, and for the most part, they're glancing them over and then throwing them in the trash and forwarding them to their information security department. However, during this time, we are multitasking. So at work, our users are accessing their personal email, which is a question of whether they should or should not be doing that in the first place, and they may be clicking on these things, right, putting your organization at risk. So they're downloading malware. They're being extorted at times. That's definitely a new technique that's being used widespread. They're stealing identities of people, and with those stolen identities, that comes, with extortion as well. Once your identity is stolen or something of value is stolen from you, sensitive data, attackers are using that to extort you. We have all of your personal data. Give me access to your company's network, right? Some users would think twice about that. Others may be in a different type of a situation. Like I said, they may be preparing for a larger attack, and this is their entrance point into your organization. So don't think of this as an individual attack. Think of this, always as the larger picture, exponentially growing. Okay. All right. So our out-of-office messages, sometimes we can give away too much information in our out-of-office message. So here is a really bad example of a out-of-office message, right? So this is just way too much information, telling exactly where you're going, who you're going with, when you're returning, when you're departing, who to contact, for security-related incidents, who to contact for wire transfers to Lagos. We pick out Lagos because, there's a lot of cyber attacks that seem to be originating from Lagos. And then, obviously, where you leave your spare house key under the door, under the doormat, and the social security number. If you don't get the email signature innuendo at the end, you can feel free to ask us later. We thought it was kind of funny. So some of the things you want to look out for. This is a dramatic posting, right? This is a dramatic out-of-office message. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody give quite as much information away on one of these. But we have to be careful about what we're telling people when we're leaving the office, right? When are we going to be back? Where are we going? Who to contact for these critical information points? If you are looking for XYZ, please contact so-and-so. These are some things that we may want to hold closer to the chest, right? We don't want to reveal all of our cards to anybody who sends us an email, right? So, thinking of things, limiting these out-of-office messages to internal staff, and then maybe giving a generic out-of-office message to external staff or external members, right? So you don't give away everything, on your, internal processes. So what can happen is you put this out-of-office message up, or with too much information, a attacker sends you an email, tries to phish you, understands where you're going, where you're at, and then they turn to your trusted counterpart as you, saying, I am, in so-and-so location, please take care of this for me with your email signature, and things can get pretty nasty, and you end up with a really nasty situation. This includes voicemails as well. Your out-of-office voicemails, that can also be exploited, so just start to think. We always say, think like a cyber criminal, think like an attacker. It will, provide benefits well beyond, if not. Another thing to be careful of is social media posting. We talk about a lot of these individual things, and they may seem, smaller in scope, but this is actually where attackers start out in, performing reconnaissance against your organization. You'd be surprised how these things begin to propagate. They pick one or two people who they believe will slip or give them some sort of information, and they start to perform reconnaissance on this open source intelligence and gathering information about these people. And then sooner or later, they're mounting social engineering attacks to compromise credentials and then moving laterally throughout your network. So anytime we're talking about individual actions, our organizations are comprised of individuals. We need to start to come together as a team and disseminate this information out to everybody, right? So social media postings, where you're going for the holidays, just be cognizant that attackers may be watching that as well. When you post pictures on social media, make sure you have geotagging turned off. That's another thing that's commonly missed. Just by default on a lot of mobile devices, when you post a picture, it's going to implant a geotag within that picture that's going to tell anybody who wants to look into it where exactly you took that picture from. So kind of dangerous. Okay. So recent life events, plans to travel, just keep it a little bit closer to the chest on social media and your open source postings. Okay, better. This is better. Less is better, right? So here's an out-of-office message that is pretty vague, but gives somebody exactly what they need to, go forward with any kind of pressing issues that they have while you are out of the office. I'm currently out of the office. Please contact the service desk or your account manager for immediate needs, right? We don't say specific email. We don't say specific phone numbers. We don't give too much information on where we're going, right? And that's exactly what we want to do, because anybody sending you a message of any importance is likely going to already know who to contact in these situations if it is an emergency, right? So less is better. And furthermore, going beyond this, if you are leaving the office, ensure that your coworkers understand the processes while you are away. And this is especially true if you are in a critical role that processes financial transactions, that grants, network access or any other kind of account management process, creation of accounts or delegation of rights and permissions in any kind of platform, resetting credentials for that matter, anything security related as well. If you are traveling out of the office or you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, you need to impart that knowledge on your coworkers so that they know exactly the flow of events if something were to occur, right? Whether that be a security incident, hopefully not, but if it is, let's say, and this is really common, request of a wire transfer or a financial transaction. If you're out of the office and you're traditionally the only person that understands that workflow, you need to impart that knowledge on somebody before you leave. because people can slip. If they don't understand the process, they may be socially engineered to transferring, $250,000 to an island in the Caribbean when they shouldn't, right? Sounds a little bit dramatic, but it definitely happens. So make sure that if you do have a critical role, give that knowledge away to your trusted coworkers, somebody who's going to be filling in while you're gone. Okay. Make sure that leaving security mishaps is off the table just because you're out of office. The lack of your presence should not spell disaster for your organization. So continuity. Okay. So this is a little bit of a new one. The United States Postal Service and some other services, they have what's called an informed delivery service. And I'll tell you just how smart our adversaries are, right? So do not underestimate these people. So they are going on sites like United States Postal Service. They take your address and they sign themselves up with their email for informed delivery. So all of a sudden now, when you're shipping packages, they're getting alerts on where the package is in transit. Is it being delivered? When is it being delivered? And then in some cases, some descriptions on where it may be coming from, so they can maybe predict what is in the package, right? So if it's coming from, let's say, a large financial institution, that may be a check, that may have some sensitive information. If it's coming from your company, if it's coming from, let's say, your 401k or retirement account, it may have some part of your social, something, right? Anything of value to these attackers that they can potentially intercept. They've been using this largely to intercept credit cards. They've begun to predict where these credit cards are originating from, the originating address, because they're relatively static at these banks, and they're getting in the middle of these shipments and receiving them when you're at work or before you come home. They're standing there waiting for the mail to get there, whatever the case may be. They're intercepting these sensitive documents, credit cards, and financial information, and all that kind of stuff. So just keep in mind, you may want to sign yourself up for this. It's free. You get notifications on what's coming to your home, and once you register your residence, nobody else can register that residence unless obviously they have your credentials to log in and delete some things. So another thing that attackers are doing with this, and it's even more nefarious, is they're purchasing illicit materials on what's called the dark web. Most of you probably understand what's the dark web, dark net, any deep web, any kind of term that you want to call it. They're purchasing things on there, right? Well, whether they be drugs or guns or whatever the case may be, something illicit that they shouldn't be purchasing, and they're shipping to other people's homes or places of business. Now, how do you do that effectively? Well, you sign up for informed delivery, and then you can be waiting there or close by when that package arrives, so that it doesn't have time to sit there and wait for somebody to pick it up and ask questions about it, right? So informed delivery is one of those simple actions that you can do today to, protect yourself and maybe protect your business as well. So this goes for businesses as well. Okay, one more thing to add on this slide before we move forward is freezing your credit accounts. I know, with the recent Equifax hack, it has definitely been a point of contention for many people on multiple levels. However, if you are not considering purchasing a home or a car or anything else that requires your credit score in the foreseeable future, just go ahead and freeze your credit accounts. It's very simple, easy to do, not so simple to unfreeze it sometimes, but it can save you in the event that somebody would like to steal your identity. So that's a little tidbit of information. Okay, so why are we here today? Phishing links go up as much as 336% around Thanksgiving. These numbers are, they explain themselves, right? 64% of organizations report an increase in cybercrime on Cyber Monday, right? There's more than 30 million malicious links sent on social networks daily. So there's a lot of different things going on, whether it be hashtag hijacking or spear phishing or clickbaiting, whatever the case may be. Hashtag hijacking is basically, let's say your organization has a new hashtag for a marketing campaign, and all of a sudden, an internet troll or, a cyber actor picks that up and they start putting in malicious links associated with that hashtag. So all of a sudden users start going to the hashtag, they're directed out to, malicious links, whether they be embedded in JPEG images or pictures or something like that. They basically use whatever means possible to do this. Spear phishing definitely up during this time, as well as whaling. There's all these interesting terms for hacking and cybersecurity. So we'll get into those and explain those. So be careful during this time. Statistics are up. All right, so what do we need? All right, we've talked about all the bad stuff. We've talked about what's happening. Yes, we're under attack. We know that we're always under attack. They're always watching. They're always looking for a route into our organizations and to steal our data. But what are some of the things that we can start to do right now, if we haven't already started to do these things, to protect our organizations, to protect ourselves as individuals as well? So we need three things. And within these three tiers, if you will, there are multiple subcategories and components that go into these. Today, we are not going to, we made it a point not to bombard everybody with the more advanced security tactics that are out there today that we are implementing. We're not going to go into artificial intelligence and machine learning and all those types of things. We're going to keep things very basic. The last thing we want to do is give you a laundry list of a million things that you have to do or that you should do before Thanksgiving, right? So what's feasible? What is feasible? So start to consider these things. We need organizational support, as we spoke on before. We need the technology to support our users, to support our security, and we need the policies and procedures to back us up in the event of an incident, to enforce best practices on users, and to just grant them the knowledge that they need to succeed. Most of the time, users within organizations don't understand what is acceptable, what is not, what I should and should not be doing, and what are the risks associated with this. So it's really, this is a culture change, changing the culture. Okay, organizational support. So users, they kind of always get picked on. They're called the weakest link in organizations. And while that is technically true, they can also be our greatest asset, right? So in order for them to be our greatest asset, it's our responsibility as an organization to give them the tools that they need, the knowledge that they need, and the support that they need to effectively combat the slew of threats that are plaguing the industry in 2018, right? There's a lot of stuff out there. So organizations, we have to set the expectations for our end users to ensure that they are operating in a safe manner, and that they have the tools and the training needed to succeed, right, to thwart these threats. So don't think of users as your weakest link. Think of them as your potentially your greatest asset, right? They are your first line and last line of defense. So if your culture doesn't place an emphasis on cybersecurity, this is where it must begin, right? Everything else is secondary. All of the tools and all of the policies and the techniques and the methodologies, your organization has to collectively get together as a team and place an emphasis on cybersecurity, right? It is no longer a choice for organizations. It is here, it's in our face, and it's our job now. We have to stop it or do as best as we can to combat these threats. So your workforce has to be a part of that defense. A sense of ownership is definitely required at some level, right? So while your end users may not own the information security program as a whole, they do play a part in that overall program. So ensure that users, they understand and have embraced cybersecurity as part of the business, right? It used to be sometimes, a separate function or completely removed from the business. It is now part of our business. So we need to talk about these things, changing the culture, even rewarding employees with, they can be intangible rewards, they can be monetary rewards, maybe vacation time, or just, praising them, public praise for, reporting a cyber attack or helping to stop or mitigate some kind of a threat, right? So that's how you kind of get them into the culture, is by rewarding them. Make it abundantly clear that reporting security incidents is not frowned upon. If users make a mistake, they need to report it immediately. And we'll talk through some of those things as well. There's a lot of fear within organizations because, hacking and cyber attacks are so public now. And we always hear news about somebody being, put to blame for it, whether it be the CISO that didn't do their job, or the CEO that ignored these things, or the stakeholders that dumped the stock when their business was hit, right? So these things, they end up, portraying a negative light against, people within organizations that are victims of cyber attacks, right? So we need to ensure that our users understand that it is not a bad thing. If you're attacked and reported it, it's a bad thing if you're attacked and then you sweep it under the rug because you're afraid, right? That's an organizational problem that we need to start to change. So organizational support, that is first and foremost, embrace cybersecurity, get your employees on board, one team, one fight, and then give them all of the tools and the information that they need to succeed. Okay. Technology support. So we could go down the list of technologies and different types of technological techniques and hardening for days, weeks, months, years, because there is so much out there. And that's a great thing. We have options. The options are not limited by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to talk about some of those core components directly surrounding the attacks that we're seeing around the Thanksgiving time, around the holiday season, and specifically Cyber Monday and Black Friday. Okay, so number one on the list, right? And it goes off of what we were just talking about, organizational support, security awareness training. Is it implemented, but is it effective as well? A lot of organizations have cybersecurity programs that are implemented, however, they're ineffective. Users see them as a check mark in gaining system access. Some of these security awareness training programs are quite laughable, to be frank, and they're not effectively imparting the knowledge on our users that they need to thwart the slew of threats that are out there right now. So, is your security awareness training implemented? Is it effective? Can you generate metrics from that platform or from that solution to prove this, right? So are users comfortable with the solution? Have they adopted the security awareness training well, right? So what's the adoption rate? Do you conduct regular phishing campaigns against your users? That's a critical aspect of this, and it goes hand in hand with security awareness training. Are you emulating real types of attacks that are out there? Are you getting your users up to speed on exactly what's going on, or are they able to spot those phishing emails, those phishing campaigns from your organization with relative ease? Right? Are they becoming ineffective? So ask yourself these questions. Whether or not you have a security awareness training program, is it effective, or are users becoming accustomed to it, right? So don't let them get complacent with the security awareness training. Ensure that it is effective. Systems are patched and up to date. Right? They should always be patched and up to date. However, with the increase in phishing attacks comes more malware embedded in these emails, and they could be 0 days to where a system patch and an update is going to do nothing for this because it can't be seen. Relatively speaking, unless you have some kind of advanced endpoint protection. But make sure systems are patched and up to date, right? So when these exploits finally do get into your environment, into your network, make sure that they can't just spread out and spiderweb laterally throughout your organization, right? You may have one system that is vulnerable, and you may have one system that gets compromised. However, if that attack can be isolated because that is the only system that was vulnerable to an update or to a lack of an update, then that's better than the latter, than all systems being vulnerable and whatever this is, this worm, this virus, this piece of malware stretching out throughout the entire environment. That can become a very large problem very quickly. So patch those critical servers now. Make sure those critical servers are patched and protected. You always want to make sure of that. And then obviously down to the desktop level, the laptop level, making sure that all systems are patched. Multi-factor authentication. I know that the other day, Azure multi-factor authentication was down for about a period of 8 hours, so that you actually received some negative publicity. However, multi-factor authentication is always a good idea. No matter what you're doing right now in information security, reviewing and implementing multi-factor authentication should be very high on your list, right? So our users, they can be trained to the ends of the earth with the best security awareness training program in the world. We can have the best email spam filtering and malicious email attachment filtering in the world. However, something at some point is going to get through to our end users. And at that time, we can't rely on static technologies to ensure that our users are protected. So multi-factor authentication, going a step further to say that when your users are compromised, finally, when they do give up their credentials to that very well-tailored phishing email, spear phishing email, that the attacker is they're going to have to possess that token in order to get into their account, whether it be their mobile device, a soft token, let's say a confirmation email, a one-time PIN on an authenticator application, or even a hardware token. They're going to have to possess a secondary factor in order to get into that user's account. So those credentials are, they're relatively useless to that attacker unless the user is using those on multiple different sites that don't offer multi-factor authentication. Whole different story. So multi-factor authentication on your email, on your systems, on your servers, on your VPN, cloud accounts that you may have. Let's say you work with ADP, for payment processing, whatever is out there that you can enable multi-factor authentication on. Just do it. Yeah, it's always a safe bet. The user acceptance of multi-factor authentication is definitely something to take a look at to make sure that you plan and project for that. Okay, next up in line, endpoint protection. Okay, endpoint protection. We want to make sure that our endpoint protection is not only implemented, but that it is up to date as well. Okay, so one of the common problems that we see across the organizations that we work with is, yes, they have some form of endpoint protection. Maybe it's a slew of different endpoint protection suites. There's no standard. Somebody may have one piece of antivirus or endpoint protection, and somebody in the organization may have another that they install themselves, which is another problem. But make sure that this is centralized, that you can view these things from a centralized console, and make sure that that endpoint protection is up to date. Right? The last thing we want to do is have endpoint protection out there that is not up to date with the latest signatures and updates, so that it can't see anything that's coming through. So antivirus, when we talk about antivirus, it is still a critical component of your information security fabric. It is still critical. It is about 30 to 40% effective, depending on the tool that you work with, in seeing all of the different types of malware out there. However, it is still critical, but we need more. So what is the more on this? We need content filtering, DNS layer protection. So your web layer. Are you filtering content that's coming into your organization? Are you filtering what users can access outside of your organization? So are you stopping them from getting to that malicious site before they have a chance to download that malware, and then it slips through the antivirus? Right. So start to consider the layered approach, what we call defense in depth, or layered cybersecurity for your organization. It is definitely critical. So solutions such as content filtering, they can prevent users from visiting phishing sites. So if they receive an email, they click on the link, right? It gets through all of our filters, bypasses everything, looks legitimate, maybe even coming from a legitimate party. The user may be prevented from going out to that phishing site by this type of layer, right? By this content filtering. And then also visiting, malware hosting sites, and also blocking malware callouts to malicious command and control servers out there. So it can do a lot of really great things for your organization. Okay, vulnerability scanning and vulnerability management. This is definitely critical, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the system patches and updates. We want to ensure that your organization understands what is exposed, right? From both a high level and a granular level, right? Macro and micro. We want to think in both ways. Most of the time, breach organizations have no idea what is actually part of their network. No idea. Most of the time when these organizations are compromised, they soon realize that they had not one or two, but they maybe had 8 different types of servers that were exposed to the internet, or a whole bunch of different things that were open to the general public that were observed, right? So we want to understand what we have, both externally, what can attackers see from the outside, and then also internally, what do we have inside of our networks that could be an exposure, that could be a risk, right? So we want to conduct an inventory scan of both externally facing and internal assets to understand exactly what we have, right? No more rogue devices or wondering what's on our network. We need to understand what we have, what is the baseline, and anything that is not meant to be there, we need to go ahead and remove that or mitigate effectively, okay? So with all these different services, your workstations, your laptops, your servers, your firewalls and web servers, facing the outside, internally, we want to query them for vulnerabilities, right? So if you don't have a vulnerability management solution, now is the time to either talk to a third party or go ahead and acquire a vulnerability management solution if you have that type of internal staff to manage it. Start to look into these solutions. We want to understand what these systems are vulnerable to, right? So This is a layered approach, again. So if things do start to get into the environment, what could they potentially exploit? That is a big question, right? And we're trying to limit that type of exposure. And then also, if possible, conduct a penetration test. Have a third party come to your place of work, remotely, physically, and try to exploit your organization. From the outside in, perform some social engineering, perform some network reconnaissance, give you an asset inventory map, show you where your risks reside from a true attacker standpoint, right? Have them emulate these types of attacks on your organization so that you can understand how you get better, how you thwart the real cyber criminals out there, okay? So last on this list is definitely an important layer. And a lot of these things on this list are things that you can do internally right now, right? So email security hardening, whether you have, Exchange Server or Office 365 or even G Suite, Gmail, whatever the case may be, make sure that you're hardening these things effectively. A lot of these come with pre-built configurations that protect you adequately. G Suite is one of them that's pretty notorious for locking things down to acceptable levels, but also you have kind of minimal control of what you can and cannot configure on those platforms. So we're talking about Office 365 and Microsoft Exchange. We want to look at Center Policy Framework, SPF, and DKIM hardening for ensuring message integrity, right? So start to look into these types of things. Another step on your email, you may want to even mark external emails by appending the subject line, and to say that anything coming in from external sources into your organization, if they originate from an external source, in the subject line they will say EXT next to them, just in case the attacker fools everything and they spoof the email address of an internal employee and it looks legitimate, then it will still be appended with an external subject line, so that your users start to become accustomed to seeing this type of thing, right? It's becoming more common. Digital email signatures, never out of the question, right? It's always a good thing to digitally sign your emails. Blocking malicious senders, a little bit more of a manual effort if you don't have, more of an intuitive email protection layer. Still, manual effort definitely goes a long way, especially if there's an organization, a cyber criminal organization, cyber crime organization that's targeting your company. Make sure that you block, their domain, block their IP address, wherever the case may be. Consider a secure email gateway is also something that you want to start thinking about to filter some of that content beyond what your native email platform can do. And then always encrypt sensitive or confidential emails, always. That is, just best practice. It's required, by a lot of regulatory obligations as well, compliance obligations. So make sure that you're doing those things. So just going down the list, marking external emails, digital email signature, start to consider those, blocking malicious senders, secure gateways, and then email encryption for confidential items. Okay, so policy and procedural support. These are some of the different policies that we want to impart on our users, right, that we want to implement within our organization. Stagnant policies are basically useless if employees don't understand how to execute them. All right, so whatever policies that you're implementing within your organization, run drills on those, run tests to make sure that they are understood, they're effective, they're accepted, right? So, incident response is a notorious one. Run incident response tests against your organization. Whether it be during a penetration test or internally, start to gauge how effective your incident response capabilities are. And that goes for anything on this list: disaster recovery and business continuity. Users should understand from, an acceptable use of information systems standpoint. They should understand what's safe, what's unsafe, what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. They should understand how to report security incidents. They should also understand where are they more at risk, right? In hotels and coffee shops, in different types of places, where are they more at risk? They should understand how to encrypt those sensitive emails or encrypt sensitive data. Access control, they should understand what is the correct process or procedure to securely grant access, right? Heightened levels of privileges to users. What does that request look like? What does that process look like? Okay, and then disaster recovery and business continuity. How do you operate in a crippled state, or how do you recover from a disaster, right? Maybe not traditional disaster like a fire or a flood, but maybe ransomware. Okay, policy, just the bottom line item on this is policies and procedures. They are meant to protect your organization by imparting the knowledge to users. They're not as a checkbox for regulatory compliance requirements. They can be, but they should provide some value to your organization. Okay, nice quote from Mr. Benjamin Franklin. Those who plan to fail, well, those who fail to plan to fail. So that's always proves true, never more than in cybersecurity. Okay, just to recap, going through a lot of the things that we talked about, phishing is definitely more targeted during this time. Attackers, they know what you're expecting, and they're capitalizing on those opportunities. So just be ready for them. Start to look at these things with a little bit more scrutiny. Right now is a critical time to do so. Sign up for that informed delivery before the attackers do. It's pretty easy. Takes a couple minutes. Keep your out-of-office messages and voicemails pretty vague. Not too vague and cryptic that people don't understand that you're gone out of the office, but just keep it vague enough that they can't use that in a social engineering attack on your employees. Establish clear lines of communication for security incidents and take reporting seriously. So that's, one of the really important things that you need to do is ensure that during this time, users understand where to report. So send an email out to your user base and saying, this is a critical time for phishing emails. Here's what to look out for. If you see anything suspicious, report to XYZ. Simple, done. Your users have been informed, and now it's up to them to act on that. And also, don't ignore those malicious symptoms before the holiday, right? So if your IT staff is leaving before the holiday and you've noticed, oh, somebody's been knocking on our firewall and getting a little bit closer every day, and you can see them attacking your organization, start to address those things, right? Because they may be waiting for you to leave in order to finally make their way into your environment. Okay. Going into the technology portion, we want to mitigate the vulnerabilities, any and all possible, especially your criticals, especially ones that are exposed to the outside. Limit your organizational exposure. Filter content to and from the organization, different layers, web application filtering, DNS layer filtering, that sort of thing. Secure email gateways. Ensure that endpoints are protected. Lock down your antivirus, make sure that everything's updated. Harden your email solution, right? Some of those things that we talked about. Implement MFA on any and everything possible, and properly train those users. That security awareness program should be working for your organization. You should be able to gather metrics on what the success rates are within the organization. And then the gray areas, policies and procedures. So you want to draft and enforce those policies. You don't have to write 15 policies before you go home tomorrow. No, that's not what we're saying. But start to consider those things and start to think about how you're going to implement these policies and which ones are beneficial or even relevant to your organization, right? If you don't use mobile devices, you may not need mobile device policy, right? So, these different things kind of weigh in on each other. Exercise those procedures, incident response testing and disaster recovery, business continuity. Make sure that you're conducting those tests at least annually or after an incident or obviously after a disaster to gauge how effective that response is. Now, a policy that it can be executed effectively or a procedure that can be executed effectively is relatively useless to your organization. So don't waste your time creating a policy if you're not going to finally tune it and test it. Ensure that users are apprised of their security-related roles, right? So changing the culture, everybody's a part of this, and get users on board to what they should do in the event of a security incident. Just like we talked about sending out those informational emails or communication channels to your organization, inform your users on the heightened risk during the holiday season, the things that we just talked about, what to look out for. What's acceptable and what's not acceptable, ensure your users are aware of that. And last on this list is a cyber liability policy, right? You want to start talking about cybersecurity insurance. It's definitely important. And in those disaster scenarios to where your organization is completely crippled by a cyber attack, the cyber liability policy may pull you out of a pretty bad spot. So it is definitely not a cover-all for cybersecurity by any means, but it's something that you want to consider having in your arsenal. And that is all for me. Back to you, Kimberly.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. What a wonderful job, and really appreciate you breaking down everything that people need to be aware of for the holiday season. So just before we wrap up, are there any questions for Tyler? If so, if you'll put them in the chat, we can address those right now. We still have a few minutes left. Really do appreciate you joining us on this holiday week, and very grateful for your support and business. If you need further assistance, you can contact us at igi.com. My email is up there, my phone number, and we do have regional support as well. So I'm happy to put you in touch with the channel manager, Jason Ortiz for the Northeast, Jason Grinnell in the Southeast. So just let us know how we can be of service. Tyler, are there any questions? Thought you did a great job of being very thorough, so there may not be any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody just, stay vigilant. As always, you want to stay vigilant within your organizations, at home, at work. Attackers, they don't necessarily care where you are when they attack you. If they can use you as a conduit to get to a larger picture or more sensitive actions, then they're going to do so. So just make sure that you're protecting yourself at all times, and keep in mind those basic types of tips that we imparted on you today. Take those with you. Take those back to your organization and disseminate that knowledge out to your users.
Great.
And have a happy holiday.
Yes, and we will keep you informed on our